Hi everybody, it's Lynn. So we're going to talk about brown today. We did our Crayola challenge, and so I picked the color brown. Oh my goodness. We've changed the camera setup just a little bit and tried to make sure that you can hear us. So I've got some backup audio going, so I hope that works out okay. Anyway, so you'll see me go back and forth to two different cameras. So I want to look at the overhead shot. I think that this, of course, I'm going to take the crayon and we're going to color brown. Wow, okay, so this is the first time I'm coloring it because I wanted to see what it looks like. This is Crayola Crayons Brown. All right. I think the first thing I notice about it is it's lighter. Of course, now we noticed this last week too. This is week 2 of our exploration of colors and patterns and quilting. I think the first thing I notice about this is that it's lighter, of course, than what the Crayola color actually looks like in Crayola form. So that's interesting. But the other thing that I think is interesting about brown is, the first thing that we talked about last time is we looked at the color wheel. And when we look at the color wheel, it's like, there's no brown there. There's no brown. Like, what are we going to do? There's no brown there. So then that becomes the question of, okay, it's not even on the color wheel. So how does brown get made? And there are ways, at least in the paint world, where brown does get made. And I'm opening up. My iPad went to sleep, so I have to open it up again. But I did do a little bit of research on the way brown is made. And one of the ways that brown is made is they mix yellow and purple together, and that would make brown. The other one is red and green. So you're looking at directly opposite of the primary color, and then blue and orange. So those are the 3 ways that acrylic, and there's like 15 ways to make brown. And brown is a encompassing color in that it's mixed of all the different color wheel elements. So I think another way to look at it is if we get out these color wheels that we looked at the other day and we try to find our brown. Let's bring this back in. And we try to find our brown here. You're going to see, I think it's a little bit more like here, which is kind of on the orange chart, right? So I think we're right in here. I tend to buy browns that would read an undertone of more on the warm side of the color wheel. I just think that I do that. I think the gray browns look a little different. Now here's the Pantone. And of course, if you went to a paint store, it would have a different, let's see, where are we? I think we're more in this area right here. Like that color right there. Looks like that's the brown that we're talking about. And again, it's kind of got an orange undertone to this. So I think this brown by Crayola has an orange undertone to it. So it's probably the one that was made with orange and directly across from that blue. So those 2 colors mixed together probably made this brown color. So that kind of gives us more information. Now, if it's going to have more blue in it, it'll be a cooler brown. Then if it has more orange in it, it would be a warmer brown. Because really, if you look at the color wheel and split it in half, here's the warm side of the color wheel and the cool side of the color wheel. And since it's mixed, it's going to have both aspects of that. So I think that that's really interesting to consider when you look at brown. Now, because it's one of those colors that is, a color that isn't one, you don't look at it on the color wheel. It can have both kinds of tones in it. This one, I think, is really kind of lands that yellow. But if you look at these browns over here, right, that's got to have more gray in it. More of that blue undertone or more of the cooler side of the color wheel. So let's, but of course, of course, we never deal in solid color. I mean, let me say this. Okay. Yes, there are specific types of quilts that lend themselves to solid color. And I think your telltale sign, or like historically, if you look at quilts that will have a white or stone or cream background and one color with it, those can be all ranges historically, because we've always had kind of solid colors to work with. But those can go back to, the 1700s, the 1800s, definitely. And I think, if you're a traditional quilter or a quilter that enjoys that reproduction, 1800s kind of reproduction stuff, I think what you look at is a lot of browns. There's a lot of browns in those. And here's my example of that. But I just want you to look at this. So this is an old jelly roll. It's reproduction kind of fabric. Gosh, it's so old. Look how that just fell apart. That rubber bands don't last forever, people. But it's going to have kind of these brown tones in it. This is a little bit darker, and this is probably where I paid attention to the color and not necessarily but that's probably close to the brown that we are looking at, right? That's hard to tell. Yeah, but this is by French General. It's a Moda line that is years old, but I think they're still designing for Moda. It probably helps to do it like this. But the French General, now they do a lot of reproduction stuff. So you see where just the designer themselves, they are looking at these creamy colors and the browns and the taupey kind of colors. Kind of, isn't that pretty? And again, I think I just collect jelly rolls. I don't ever use them. But notice that they put red with it, and that's very prominent in the colors. Now, I will say, when you look at reproduction fabric, browns and reds are very common in some of the older stuff. So I just finished a quilt, and it's actually on the long arm right now, where I took brown and I paired it with these reds. Now, some of these were in I don't think I had a jelly roll. I think I just had some fat quarters. I think that's what I had, was fat quarters. And this is me, and y'all just, accept that I'm weird, but I don't use a lot of jelly rolls because it's not enough of the fabric for me. So when I was new, I would buy them. But you can tell this is old because this quilt store is closed. Little Quilts is no longer open. And it's $35, and I don't think you can get a jelly roll for $35 anymore. I think they're closer to $40. And $42, I think, the last time I saw one. A full price. Now you can get them on sale. But anyway, so this was a fabric that I really liked. I was really attracted to this hot cocoa line of fabric that came out. And I'm talking to you in 2022. So this came out in 2021, the end of the year, kind of a Christmassy type of thing. And I wanted it for my couch in my living room. And I have a brown couch. So there you go. But so I bought this, and I paired with it two browns. These were out of my stash. This is a grunge, and this art gallery, I think, fabric. But this one, you'll notice, this one is definitely more cool, and this one's more warm. Now, grunges, they definitely have a look to them or whatever. But I did want to say that here's red with brown. So red definitely goes with brown. So I think you can find that that's not only historical in some of the reds and browns together, but I think you'll find that those work really well together, both historical, and this is new fabric. So it's still going to be that classic look. My background, I did choose kind of a creamy, taupe as my background. And of course it's pattern because I love pattern. But I think you'll find that Valentine's Day fabrics, which y'all know it's just past Valentine's Day, if you're watching current. But Valentine's Day fabrics have a lot of brown in them. And I think it's that whole chocolate, candy kind of stuff with it. But, so brown, what else can brown go with? Well, I thought that this was interesting. This was one of those things that I thought, hey, we looked at this last week, and I thought it was so funny. Someone said on the comments last week that I thought it was like a weird mistletoe looking, and they said cotton balls. And I don't think it's really cotton balls, but I think that makes sense. It does have that little cotton ball thing. But notice how this is a warm color on the warm side of the color wheel, and here you've got this brown fabric that kind of marries with it really nice. This is a wood grain. This is just a great basic to have in your stash, especially if you're an art quilter. I have used this for a lot of different things. Like if I've wanted the sashing to look like a shelf, or I've wanted to do a tree trunk, or so if you can find one that's kind of got this cute wood grain kind of look to it, I think you will use it more than you realize. But this does have brown in it, so I'm, marrying that back together. And of course, I know we did goldenrod last week, but I think that all of these can marry really close to that nice kind of brown. They all look good with brown. But again, we're kind of living on the warm side of the color wheel. I think it's interesting because I think that I have used brown a lot more than I wanted to give myself credit for, Here's another one that I did. This was a sample that I did with the stitch. And the focus fabric, let me turn this around this way so it looks right side up. But the focus fabric was a Moda line that had this kind of paint my number, and it was deer and trees, and it was kind of looked like the old paint my number thing, and I loved it. So, but notice I paired brown and purple and red together. It's red and orange, this pattern. But that's what's deceptive. I think that's one of the things that we really need to focus on when we're talking about color with quilts, because you're normally not just putting, unless you're using straight solids, you're normally not just putting one color with the next color. You're using patterns. You're using prints. So do these work together? Yeah, I think they do. I like them. And I think I would like this with it too. So I think this could be in a complementary box with it if this is our close to brown. And it's kind of, yeah. Kind of. All right, so the other color, if we're going to say red goes, let's look at orange. Orange definitely is going to go with brown. I know you saw some of these colors last week, but orange is going to look great with brown. Orange is made with brown. I mean, if we looked at how it was made. So definitely orange is going to be a nice choice to go with brown. We can look at greens with brown. And these we looked at last week too. But look, that's just sharp. I like that green with brown. And of course, this picks up a little bit of brown with that print. That's an interesting color with brown, with this brown. I don't know that I absolutely love it, but I don't hate it. Now this, definitely those, well, maybe not all these together, but I'm just saying, like that is a nice look. I like that kind of deep ground. Oh, of course, I'm loving plaids right now. Are you guys not loving plaids? Like they are just so, and I think that was out of a Christmas line too, but man, it doesn't have to stay Christmas. I always believe that you should rescue fabric out of whatever it is. Now, this one I pulled one because I think the owls are upside down. I think the owls are super cute. So you've got this print with owls in it. Now, it does have orange in it. So I think you can definitely pull some orange to go with it. And you can probably pull this like cheddar, even though it's not picked up in this. But this is, like, this would work for me for a quilt block or a quilt. Like, pull in some of that orange. And I like this orange with it, too. You don't have to stay in the thing. But this, I think you want to look at. Look, I like a background that's going to talk to this background. So here's what I'm saying. Like when you look at backgrounds of prints, you want to try to look at, is that really a cream or white? And if it's a cream, you want to pick more of a creamy color as your background. If you are liking the light color and you want great contrast, then you want the white. I think white would be way too stark. And let's look at some black and whites with this too. Like that is a white background, right? So this is really white and it's up against this creamy, and it's just a little too stark for me. This would not be one of my choices, right? I wouldn't find that as coherent as if I picked maybe one with cream. And I'm still doing black and white, but that just relaxes it just enough that it picks up that the same kind of tone instead of a stark white. Do you see the difference in that? And I think browns may lend itself to more of a creamy black and white than a white black and white. Of course, you can always use black. This has got black in it. That's going to be fine, definitely, with that brown. A polka dot. I love a good polka dot. But again, pay attention to your polka dots, because some polka dots will read cream and some will read white. And this one reads a little bit, that may not be bad. I think that is a cream, actually, when I look at it. Yeah, I don't hate that. Isn't that pretty? Look how I've just pushed back. This, okay, don't like how that looks. And y'all, I'm looking at the camera so I see what we're doing. Now this is going to read a little bit more white to me, and I don't think that that works, because that's not. So just pay attention when you're looking at some of the background stuff. This is the one I kind of liked the best, and the reason I kind of like it the best is that it has definitely brown in the print, and I'm sorry, it's a small piece of it. It's got brown, but I like how it pulls in this blue, you know, and that may be interesting to pull that in, right? Kind of interesting. I don't know. Depends on the block. You know, just have a little pop of something else would definitely, and then it's got this pinky color in this too. It depends on how big this is too in it. Because sometimes if you cut these really small strips, if you're just using this, you'll never see this. So, all right, but blue with brown. So we've delved into the, warm side of the color wheel. We've looked at the yellows. We've looked at the oranges. Have we looked at reds? I don't know. But we've looked at the blues. So look here. Let me change it. So look behind me. So this quilt, right, is brown and turquoise blue. That's what it is. Now it's a darker brown than this, and I would say it's a more cool brown, definitely a more cool brown, but it's still that turquoisey, bright turquoisey kind of color. This is even darker. Like if you look at this is even darker. And let me tell you a story about this quilt. So when I first started quilting, it's one of the first quilts I made, actually, probably 4 or 5 in, and I wanted to learn how to curve piece. So I bought some templates, and I think this is somebody back porch design templates. I'll try to put a link in the thing if you're interested in it. But it comes in 2 different sizes, and so if you'll notice the smaller size, let me see. The smaller size, which is that right there, that smaller size, and there's bigger size. And those, so I just found this. Okay, so one of my favorite quilt stores is Hancock's in Paducah, Kentucky. And it's a quilter fabric dream. So I grew up close to there, and I knew it existed, and I used to go to that place before I was ever a quilter. And so I had my family lived in Southern Illinois, so I live in Georgia now, and so I had gone home, and I'd always planned, like I always plan my trips. I always planned my trips when Hancock's I knew was going to be open, because it's about an hour south of where my hometown was. And so when I go to see my mom, I would make sure I drive by and stop at the quilt shop, to go to the bathroom and get a drink and all that kind of stuff and fill up on gas or whatever. So that was always one of my stops. So what is great about Hancock's is they have these bins that they do a lot of online sales. So if you want to get online sales, Hancock's of Paducah is definitely a quilt shop you can look at. And they carry Tula, they carry Kaif, they carry all the modas, they carry it, you know, lots of solids. Just, and they're real, it's a family that owns it. So anyway, so I stopped, and what's nice about Paducah is, or at Hancock's is, in their bins, they have sale bins, and it's half off, you know, cost. And what happens is when people order fabrics, and it's less than a yard, at the end of the bolt, they put it on the sale bin fabric. So it could be brand new stuff, but it's on the sale bin fabric. So I picked up all this fabric, just like, you know, 3/4 of a yard or half a yard, or that's usually about the size, usually never a yard. And I just picked up a bunch of them, and they're all from, not the same line. There are a couple from a different line, but just that blue and turquoise. I just liked it. And so that's what I made that quilt out of. And I will say, this is the one I sleep under every night. Like, I had to, before filming today, I had to come down, I had to pull it off the bed and come downstairs. So it was a good reason to wash the sheets a day early because I stripped the bed. But, yeah, so this is like one of my very favorite quilts, and I love it, which is funny because if you know me at all, I put orange in almost every quilt. Isn't that weird? And it's got no orange in it whatsoever. It's all the turquoise and brown. And I have to admit, when I drew the color this week, I was like, oh, this is the quilt I'm going to hang behind me, is this quilt right here. So anyway, it goes with everything. I love this quilt, and it's funny that it's turquoise and brown. But I will say, too, all of my good friends who do not quilt or sew, they don't at all, and, you know, they come over to the house or whatever, they have all seen this quilt, and they've been like, that's the one I want. And it's simple, simple, simple pattern. It's just, I guess I just need to write it down of what I did. But anyway, I didn't really follow a pattern. I'm not good at following patterns, just FYI, I kind of make it up as I go along. So let's look at this next one, and I think this is interesting. I made a quilt out of this. All right, I fell in love with this fabric. I bought a whole bolt. That's how much I fell in love with this fabric. And you can't tell, but it's got a ton of brown in it. So this is an artist that does posters of all the national parks. And so my father and my father-in-law were both worked for Tennessee Valley Authority, and, you know, did a lot of work with environmental education in national parks and state parks. And so my dad actually managed Land Between the Lakes. So I am in love. I just spent a lot of time growing up in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. And so that was just one of the main reasons. And I just love the look of how this artist created these. But there's a lot of these that have brown in it. I'm trying to show you, like, there's brown here and here and here. And so when I made a quilt for my father-in-law, my dad's passed, but when I made, my father-in-law's passed too now, but I made a quilt for him before he passed and used brown to highlight this. So you can see where, even though this print, because we deal with prints, people, this print has a lot of colors in it. Like, it goes from purple to, you know, oranges to yellows. If you look over here, there's a lot of blues, greens. You know, it goes because it's all the different, you know, parks, state parks, national parks in our country. So I just think, I love this. I love this. So anyway, here's brown, and it goes with that perfectly. It's a nice, even though this is black, this little in between here is black, this brown would work with this completely. And what else I like with it is you can put other browns with it. And I think that's, I'll have to get that quilt out and show you what I did with it. But these all work because of that. And honestly, you know, these work too. This is one of the things where a print can totally determine what else goes in the quilt. This would be a multicolored quilt. I think I kind of stuck to the oranges and the reds and maybe the browns when I made the quilt. I'd have to go look at it again. I made 2 and I didn't give the other one to the person yet. Shh, don't tell my sister. She's probably not watching. So you can see how this would definitely go in a bunch of different ways, using brown as kind of your background color, even though you're going to highlight this type of print. This type of print is highlighted. When you're using this type of print in a quilt, you are fussy cutting this, you're highlighting it, you're making it look definitely more like that. So anyway, the next one that I want to think about and look at is green, glorious green. And what made me think of this is the quilt behind me that you saw, the same company came out the next year and they did browns and greens together. And you can see how green and brown just go fantastic together. And it's not, like, to me, that's the wrong green. That's got too much, it's too bright for this brown. It may be interesting in some quilts. I'm not totally taking this out, but it wouldn't work with these other ones as well, right? Definitely. And this is kind of a very yellow green, and how those browns work. But I really like that together. Definitely think that that is very attractive. And I'm telling you, I watch, different designers online on YouTube, and they are all talking about how green is the color that they're seeing in the paint world, in the design world, and that people are just going to paint their walls green, and green's going to be a big color. So, and I agree with them. I think it is. Okay, I'll just move this out of the way for a little bit. So here we've got this. This is a brown, definitely brown background with what I think you would consider maybe a surprising look to it. But your pinks are going to go with this. So brown and pink, brown and blue. This blue with that kind of muted green will go with this. I'd even hit some hot pink. And I think you could pull red into this as well. Did I pull red? I didn't. But I think you could pull like that red that we saw in the, let me scooch this without tipping everything over. Like these reds would definitely look good with that, right? That may be a little hot, but definitely here with the red. Yeah? So I'm letting my focus fabric kind of tell me what else it wants to play with, tell me what else it wants to live with, tell me what else it wants to be happy with. But I audition all of these things. I definitely, and that's an interesting little kind of peachy color right there. I think you see it a couple of places. Now, if you don't know, I do wrap all of my fabric on cardboard. Let me say this right. Comic book backer board. And the comic book backer board that I use is 7 by something, and then I get the 8.5 by 11, and I cut that into 4s, and that's what gives me the fat quarters. So all my yardage is wrapped on this. But this is a really attractive kind of, I don't know, I loved it, so I bought it. I haven't done anything with it yet. Maybe I should. Okay, so this is another version of, I think Amy Butler did this. I could be wrong. So correct me if I'm wrong. Amy Butler did this one, but again, it's that brown, that dark brown. Like this is chocolate brown. Deep. It's much darker than this one. And we may have to see this again if one of the Crayola crayons is this dark. But I didn't want to avoid it because, here's the thing. When we say brown, to me, that's a really big, versatile color, and it's a very versatile color. I literally think you could use brown with almost every one of the color wheel, right? It's definitely going, I gotta get used to this. It's definitely gonna fit with anything on here because it's brown, because it's one of those neutrals that I think are true neutrals. Now, I've said this before on the stitch, and I truly agree with this, that any color in your quilt you can treat as a neutral. It won't always read as a neutral, but you can definitely treat it as a neutral, so that you don't have to pull in the creams or the whites or the browns or the grays. And those are kind of more of the traditional neutral type colors. But, you know, I don't think you have to make quilts with those colors in them. So, let me pull in this. This one I'm pretty excited about. So, I'll switch the overhead again. This... got brown in it, but it's one of those. It's a K Facet. I'm a big K Facet fan. Definitely love his coloration of things. Now, 9 times out of 10, you see this fabric in blue or green. I don't know if it was in the warm colors like in the reds and oranges, but I've seen it a ton of time in blue or green. And when I saw this brown version, I fell in love. And the reason I fell in love is because I see blue and green all the time. So I'm attracted to things that are not normal. And I love this. Now, this is one of those, I think this is the perfect example of where brown can be used with anything in the color wheel, right? Anything. Brown is all over this, and yet there's greens in it. There's, definitely these golds in it, and I love these gold kind of colors. This is a hand-dyed. Don't you love that? That is just so... And hand-dyeds are so expensive, but they're beautiful. You've got these purpley colors in it. Isn't that wonderful? And then it also pulls in these really nice tealy colors. And definitely, now this is Cave, so that's kind of cheating because it's the same designer. But it's not cheating. It's totally not cheating. Using the same designer, there's nothing wrong with that. But notice how these all work with this. This would be so fabulous. In fact, this one may stay out, and I may need to pet it for a little while because I just think this one's got a lot of potential to it. And it's one of these fabrics that I just fell in love with. And I think my sister was with me, and I got it at Hancock's. Da-da-da. And I think my sister was with me, and she was like, "You like that?" I was like, "I love it." So I know it's not everybody's cup of tea, but it definitely is mine. Okay. How much fabric do you buy? This is the question. You guys should answer this. I will give you my answer maybe Tuesday. I may give it to you Tuesday. So how much fabric do you buy? If you love the fabric, how much fabric are you going to buy of it? So that's the question. I hope we've discussed a lot of the brown and how you've seen how it can be used in tons of different ways. Brown is a great color. If it's something you don't have in your stash, definitely get some for your stash. I think you'll find that you'll use it more than you realize. It's got just so versatile in how it can be used. So show me your browns. Show me your browns. Show me your browns. And let me know how much fabric you buy when you buy fabric that you fall in love with. And I will tell you my answer on Tuesday. So if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. Share with your friends. I really appreciate that. I really would love to be able to get this channel out more to more people and let people know we're doing this cool challenge. So next week we will pick the next crayon on what we're going to talk about. And until then, have a great weekend, blessed day, and like, share, and subscribe. And we'll talk to you later.